Hey everybody, this is Carl Smith again. It's still March 2015. I'm taping right now. I guess my podcast is live to tape. I don't know what that means. I don't know what any of this stuff means. I used to know what radio was, and I don't even think it exists. And anyway, so podcast number 9 with Brian David Johnson. He is at bdjcraftworks.com. He is an artist, a woodworker. He's also a podcaster. His podcast is called Craftworks Dialogue. And I think me, him, and Free Beer podcast are the only 3 Austin art podcasts. There's probably, a couple more out there. I just haven't come across them yet. But anyway, I wanted to tape a short intro for him. I'm looking forward to talking with him about like actually having a successful business as an artist, because he woodworks. He makes like actual useful things for your home, like furniture and shit and stuff you can like sit on. I mean, paintings, you just hang them and hope that they decorate your house nicely. So it's cool that he's making stuff that you could put yourself in and be in that thing in the water and like row around. He makes cool shit like that anyway. So here it is, number 9, Austin Abstract Artists Podcast with Brian David Johnson. Yeah, I just don't have the money, or I borrowed this from a comedian, Derek Phelps, who tapes all his sets with it.
Right.
Yeah, but it doesn't work great in this room. It's kind of boomy. But I'm broke. What do you use equipment-wise?
I use a Zoom H4n, and I rented it. You can rent them really cheap. And I actually rented it just on an ongoing basis for like, I don't know, I think it was like $15 a month or something like that, or 20 from Rock and Roll Rentals.
Yeah.
But then I finally, actually I mentioned in that podcast,
Yeah.
they just were like, they just offered me a buyout on it. It was like, for another $40 or whatever, I just ended up paying for it and buying it.
Yeah,
but it's a little digital thing. It has 2 inputs.
Oh.
So it has 2 mic inputs, like full-on, whatever you call it, I forgot the name of the input, but it's a certain type that like all like musician stage mics and most mics all have that same input.
Oh, yeah.
It's a certain type.
Okay.
So it's a full-on, and then it's a full mic cord with a real, I got these, they're pretty much just like a standard old man in the street kind of microphone.
Sure.
And you could put lots of different kind of mics on them.
Yeah.
But I just got these real durable ones I bought from some guy on Craigslist. I did a little research on them.
Yeah.
So I used those 2 mics, and I made little mic stands for them.
Yeah.
So that, because I like it to be right. Sounds a little better if you can get people a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, professional, yeah. Yeah, it sounds really, the sound level's good on all of them, really
It's sometimes I screwed up. Sometimes, like, for instance, with this guy, Joel, it's funny, I kind of got relaxed about people being, having, when I first started doing it, like, I always have a line in, like, I'll have earbuds so I can hear what you can hear, like, it being recorded. It's like kind of weird. It's sort of the equivalent of musicians have speakers on stage that give them so they know they can hear themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like you can hear yourself, but a lot of times I have a splitter so the other person can also hear as well, so they're also in.
Yeah.
But I started getting lazy, or not lazy, just like feeling like, oh, people don't need to as long as I can hear what's going on. But like what happened with Joel was he was breathing into the mic.
Yeah.
Kind of heavily. And I ended up trying to like filter it out on GarageBand, and it got a little bit, it just kind of messed with the sound a little bit, and then I messed with the volume. I had to re-edit it and put it back out. And so sometimes I have issues with the sound. Like I had these sisters, and they were both sharing the mic, so they sounded a little more distant. But yeah, I guess it sounds pretty, considering I don't totally know what I'm doing, it sounds decent. I think I work hard at making it. I want it to sound, I'm the kind of person that, I tend to like, if I'm gonna do it. I want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a perfectionist.
Yeah, you're a woodworker. Yeah. You've got a tool for every little thing that needs to happen in the world.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm more like the opposite. Like I'm a painter. I just get it done, throw it together. Mm-hmm. Let's paint on this piece of garbage and try to sell it. To,
Yeah.
You know, and so I apologize for my set. I have
Here's the thing. I'm a pretty laid back guy. And I'm not judgmental about other people's, like, if anything that's interesting to me, I don't care.
Sure.
Quite honestly, give a shit less. This is your thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not. It's interesting. Everybody does their own thing. Some people don't maybe want it to sound more.
Yeah.
Like a little more raw, not so polished. That's pretty cool actually. Like I'm very open-minded to all different paths. That's just how I've operated, but I could care less. This is your thing. And,
okay.
And it's also kind of interesting again, like
everyone's got their way of doing stuff.
Yeah, and like sometimes raw is better. Like it's something I actually struggle with sometimes with my own work. Mm-hmm. It's like I like things that have more character and are more kind of beat up.
Sure. And
yet my work comes out super polished, and sometimes I'm like, why can't I make stuff that looks more like stuff I like? Like I'm not. That sounds crazy, but like.
What do you mean?
Well, like my own personal aesthetic is more worn in.
Yeah.
And like it's funny that doesn't sort of show up in my work.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So
there's still not
when things are kind of rough and like maybe not so polished, it's cool too. Like I totally can appreciate like a more, maybe that. Who's to say like the volume sounding so crisp or whatever is so great.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a million perspectives. So.
Well, cool. Well, that's Brian David Johnson. This is Austin Abstract Artist Podcast number 9. I do this to everybody, so we don't have. And I tape an intro just like you do.
Yeah.
I try to put in a little music, but man, thank you for coming. I'm Carl Smith. Did I say 9? I said number 9. Yeah, this is number 9. So I really, really appreciate you coming here.
Sure.
I'm a fan of your work. I'm a fan of your podcast. I think we're the only, me, you, and Free Beer Podcast are the only 3 arts-based podcasts in Austin, I think.
That's pretty hard to believe.
Do you know of any other ones?
I don't.
And I search for, I kind of look around, I'll go into iTunes, and search for them like once a week. I'm a huge connoisseur of podcasts. So I work at the IRS, horrible office job, but they let you listen. You can listen to anything you want. And I download 8 hours of podcasts a day. Probably. Yeah.
I just listened to like 2 today while I was working.
Really?
Yeah.
So which podcasts do you listen to?
Well, it's funny. The ones I listen to more than anything are comedians podcasts.
Me too.
Those
are my favorite.
I listen to Todd Barry.
Uh-huh.
And then I listen to Pete Holmes, the latest Pete Holmes, which it just came out like today.
Yeah.
Man, what a mind blower. Pretty weird. I was almost like thinking, this was kind of intense to listen to before I go sit down and do a podcast.
It gets really... Is that a weekly one?
More or less, yeah. I think so. I mean...
So I really love the Mark Maron one, and that's more of a personal one-to-one.
Yeah.
That's
what I've been listening to. I actually kind of got off Maron lately.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I started my podcast like about 2 years ago.
Oh.
A little over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I just have been very slow about my output just because I'm so busy and stuff. But I'm actually kind of getting to a place where I had to have a personal talk with myself this year where I was like, if you really want to do this, you need to make time for it instead of... I end up editing late at night and like kind of... And I'm realizing that it really means a lot to me. I care about it. Mm-hmm. And if I do, I really need to like make time for it instead of... And I have such a busy schedule, so squeezing it in, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm really going to make an effort because I'm getting a lot of good feedback on it. I love doing it, and I'd like to see it just continue to grow in different ways. And so, I'm going to start putting more time to it. But it's crazy. I've been doing it for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And I was listening to Mark Maron, I think like for 4 years or something. I started listening to him kind of before it blew up, and really it was kind of what inspired me, even though I had actually had the idea of doing interviews with people for about 18 years.
Really?
And since when I first got introduced to Fresh Air when I was younger, I was so in love with that format of the in-depth interview. I was like, I had this idea. I used to work for estate sales.
Oh.
And I was like, I would always see these reel-to-reel kind of recorders. I was like, I want to pick up one of those and like start interviewing people as a hobby.
Yeah.
Just people that I found interesting. So I always had that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And when podcasting came around and I was listening to Mark Maron, I was like, hey, I've always already had this idea that I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
What if I just start doing different creatives that I know? I know so many cool, interesting people.
Yeah, and I'm surprised more people aren't doing... Well, I'm not actually too surprised. A lot of the creatives I know are very focused on their work.
Right.
And they're like, well, or maybe they're older hobbyists and they're like, what is a podcast? Is it radio? I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
How do you get paid for it? Are you getting paid for it yet? Like,
yeah.
Just take it easy.
Yeah.
It's somewhat of a new medium, but it's really open. You can, do anything. It's really cool. But were you interested in like Stern or any of that stuff?
Not so much.
No.
No, as far as other interview-based sort of stuff, I can't say.
Because hate's a strong word, but my wife loves NPR, and I try to get. It's Terry Gross. It's her. I've listened to her for a couple of years, and then I was just like, God, she sounds so. I can't hear her voice anymore. I don't know. It depends on who she's interviewing. I really like Alec Baldwin has one.
Oh yeah. No, I've listened to his before.
He's so weird. He's the weirdest dude. He's like kind of pretentious, but really smart too, but experienced.
Did you see him on Comedians in Cars drinking coffee?
I didn't see his.
Oh,
it's gotta be
awesome.
Great.
But really, there's one particular part where he tells this Rip Torn story, and he imitates Rip Torn, and it's a real gem. It's actually I don't know what people think of that. I wasn't so into Comedians in Cars. Like when I first saw it, I was like, whatever. Jerry Seinfeld and his fancy cars, big deal.
Yeah.
But I kind of start when that Louis C.K. one came out.
That's a great one.
And then I don't know. I was in Colorado all last summer. When I came back, I had wireless for the first time in my apartment. I could actually watch movies on my iPad, and I started consuming more media because I don't actually watch hardly any TV at all. Yeah. I don't own a TV, and so I just kind of got into that and started watching multiple episodes of Comedian Cars and kind of actually got into it and like it. It's kind of a fun. Certain ones are really good. And,
it's hit and miss for me, and
yeah.
I love how his cars always break down. He's probably got 50, and I don't really like Seinfeld that much. I didn't like his show or
right.
But he can be funny and engaging. I love the Chris Rock one. Yeah, and he's probably got 60 cars.
Well, they're not all his car, though. That's the thing.
No.
They're not all his. I think some of them are, but some of them they borrow or...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think... I think that's another like kind of weird thing with that show is it's kind of like the Jay Leno. Jay Leno, everybody thinks... these guys have a million cars, like, that's what he's doing, but I don't think that's the point. It's not like, hey, look at me, I'm Jerry Seinfeld, and I kill cool cars. I think he likes cool cars, but I think maybe only half of them are his, or...
Right. He said the number before.
Oh, really?
He alluded to it, but was sort of embarrassed about it.
Oh, yeah.
But it was around, it was close to 50 or something.
Oh, really? Like 50%?
No, 50 cars.
Oh, how many he has. Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe more of them are his than I thought, but I've always noticed, like, I read the car courtesy of...
Yeah. They pop it in a weird spot, too. They try to fit it where they'll be walking. The one with Sarah Silverman, I remember they're walking down the street and they, like, accidentally run into the car that's the sponsor.
Right. No, but at the end, if you notice the credits, and maybe I'm kind of a credit freak, they'll say the fancy car he was driving was courtesy of.
Oh.
And sometimes it'll be, like, some random couple.
Oh, really?
Or some other thing. I think he has a production company that I've seen numerous times. I'm like, oh, I think if you see that, you know it's his car.
Right. So I got which car did he? It's got to be an American car, like a Chrysler or something. But for Alec Baldwin, they must have got
I can't remember.
A Dodge or something.
No, it was a pretty cool car. You know the one I really love though, and it's Letterman. He did Letterman.
Oh yeah.
That one is.
That's pretty good.
That one I loved because I have watched Letterman since. Him and Johnny Carson were some of my heroes growing up. I used to watch Letterman's show when he had a daytime show early in the... Like, people don't even remember that.
No.
He used to have a daytime show when I was, like, 9 years old.
Wow.
And I watched it during the summers with my older brother and stuff. And he even had Stupid Pet Tricks. Paul Schaefer was there.
Wow.
That was back in the late 70s.
Wow.
I was born in 70.
I was born in 75.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in the same wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, I love the, never not funny, weird. It's cool how every comedian kind of has to have one. The Bill Burr one, and that's what they do. Mm-hmm. And I would love for artists to get on board with that, because I know a lot of artists that are interesting and kind of funny. They're super serious, but I think if they try to develop that and like what you're doing, I think it would be really good.
I think it's the most amazing format in medium, and it's extremely interesting to me on a few different levels. Yeah. And I sometimes feel like there's some intuitive sense I have about it that it's, well, for starters, it just creates this space where you get to go in, you get to have an in-depth conversation with somebody, which is we don't really create that in our lives. And most people's lives are, it's just, we feel like sure, a lot of us do, but I'm saying in general, It feels very rushed, very harried.
Yeah.
That's, just enough time for a soundbite and a like, or on Facebook, or a post, or whatever.
Image, yeah.
But the idea of a real good, authentic, the reason I call mine dialogue, I like the idea of a dialogue, of a conversation, back and forth of ideas and going deep, and that's why mine, some people may get annoyed with my podcast because it goes, maybe I'm bringing up too much of my own stuff, but that's the whole, for me, it's not just an interview. It's whenever somebody says something that strikes a chord in me or reminds me of something I do in my work, I feel like it's interesting to bring it up and just have it be a real conversation, not just purely an interview about them.
Right.
And that's why it's called Kraftwerks Dialogue.
Yeah. It's bdjkraftworks.com is where you'd get to the SoundCloud.
Yeah.
That's your website.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's really great what you were saying about people are so busy. They can listen, and that's what I do at work. I listen to podcasts while I'm doing that. So I'm busy, which I'm going to continue to be busy. That's not going to change. Yeah. But I can, listen on my iPhone and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I even feel like it could potentially, this may sound weird, and I don't know exactly, it's like an unformed thought or like an idea of where it might head, but where people are going to possibly in the future, it's a way of creating an intimate connection. It's like, hey, you want a podcast for lunch?
That's how we connect now. We don't have time.
Which sounds weird, but that we would, that is and also the fact that not only do we get to connect, sit down and have this conversation, but that other people get to kind of be in on that. Yeah. And in on that little intimate connection between two people and be a part of it. It's pretty rad. When I just interviewed a comedian from New York the other day, and I literally said to him in the interview, I was like, "Oh, you remember you told me something, Yeah. And I'm like, I had to stop myself, and we laughed. And I'm like, well, it's funny. You didn't tell me. Well, you told me in a podcast. But it felt like
it was personal.
I feel like I know him so well from listening to so many of his podcasts.
So that was the Kraftwerks Dialogue podcast?
Mm-hmm, yeah, I haven't put it out yet.
Who was the comedian?
Mark Normand.
Okay.
He's a New York comedian who opens up for. He got best comedian in New York, Time Out New York, 2013. He's like Amy Schumer's one big opener. He opens for her all the time, and he's super successful in New York. But he hasn't really broken nationally quite yet. Okay. The reason I wanted to have him on, first of all, I think he's super funny, but he's also just really into the craft of comedy. He's real serious. Yeah. New York. He's kind of a partier, kind of a madman in many ways, but when it comes he lives and breathes New York comedy. Yeah. And to me, he's the perfect person to kind of have on to really ask about the finer points of do you get tired of telling the same joke over and over? And just
I'm incredibly interested in the comedy scene in Austin, which is sort of there's a lot of turnover. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that come here, write, live cheaply. That's all going to change. But they go away or they go to New York or LA. But I've been a fan of I've been here since for decades, and I've been a pretty big fan of the comedy scene. Yeah, and it's really cool. There's a lot of. Are there any comedians that you like here?
That's one thing that's kind of crazy about me. I don't go out and see comedy. Yeah, I went to one I mean, once in a blue moon, I'll go to Cap City for something. Like,
Sure.
I saw Mark Norman there last December.
Was he the headliner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I went and saw some stuff at Cold Town.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's, yeah.
I don't go. I really should. But
Yeah.
this is this classic thing where I feel like I don't get out enough, period. I don't watch enough other... I'm so busy doing my own work.
Yeah. And
That I kind of,
yeah,
you know...
I hear you. And you're from Austin.
Yeah.
And you're like a 5th generation Texan or something. Crazy.
Austinite, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. My
Wow.
family is... My great-great-grandfather moved here from Sweden in the 1850s.
Really?
So my family's been here for a long time.
Sweden. How did he end up in Austin?
You know, there's a bunch of Swedes that came here in the early era. He was...
It was a mix of everybody, Czechs and Poles and...
Yeah, just like I guess anytime you break down when a new area develops, that kind of happens, right? But yeah, definitely, he came here and he actually brought other Swedes over and stuff. He was kind of a...
Was he writing back, convincing him to come over?
See, here's the thing. That's what's so weird. I don't know. It's that far back that I don't know that much history about him.
Yeah, it might not be documented at all.
Yeah, I know that he was... So he lived... it's kind of a funny story. I don't know if you really want me to get into it or not, but he lived right where there's this Foreign Legion building down on the corner of Lake Austin Boulevard where it goes under Mopac, where like 5th and 1st come in right there.
Yeah.
There's this old building with the cannons in front of it, right off the lake. You see it right there. It's right off the lake. He lived in that house. He built this house. He has houses on Lake Austin Boulevard, and he had like a grist mill, a limestone quarry. He was kind of an industrialist. Fairly like a businessman and did pretty well for himself. But and owned a lot of property, and then but then as it turns out, let's see, between like multiple generations, between my great and my grandfather, there was a split.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't like each other.
Sure.
My leg of the family ended up like growing up out in Westlake Hills,
Okay.
which is kind of funny because it's like a wealthy suburb now, a nice suburb of Austin. But when my dad was born out there, it was just the woods. It
Right.
was like literally, they were
Hills and
super,
rocks.
really poor.
Rough country.
Yeah.
Not fun to live out. Can't really grow anything. Or...
I mean, yeah, I don't know what it was like back then. I mean, he hitchhiked into Austin High and stuff. He still lives out there. He's 81.
Wow.
He was born out there in 34. And one car an hour would go down B Caves Road.
Wow.
Yeah, it trips me out sometimes because I think about he's the last of his family. All his relatives are gone. He's like the last man standing of sort of a generation from that time period.
Wow.
So he's seen a lot of change out there.
Well, and you have too. I mean, have you lived anywhere else besides Austin?
No, I spent like some long summers in Alaska. I used to work on fishing boats in my 20s up there.
Wow.
A little bit, and that would be like the closest I've come to living anywhere else.
Hmm.
And then last summer I lived in Colorado for the summer.
Cool. So there's a million directions I want to go with this. I'm just going to go traditional, and you do this in your podcast too. We talk to artists, and I'm like selfishly I'm interested in the podcast aspect of what you do, but I'm really interested in like what were you making art as a kid?
Sure.
Were you painting when you were 5? That type of shit.
What's funny is not as much. I always had sort of an odd creative bent. I was really into comedy. It's funny you talk about the comedy podcast. Listening to Mark Maron it reminded me like how much I was into comedy. It almost gave me a rebirth because when I was younger, I was super into comedy.
Oh, really?
When I was growing up as a kid and stuff.
Did you watch SNL and stuff?
I mean, I did, but I was more like I was into George Carlin. We used to like redo. We used to listen to Cheech and Chong albums and like redo this, like re-record our own versions of different skits from the albums and stuff. And,
wow.
And just like I just remember watching like the Pee Wee Herman when he first came on the scene as there used to be HBO used to have this annual Young Comedians special that would happen, and Pee Wee Herman, like I saw his debut on there, and I mean, just I don't know, I was really mesmerized by comedy when I was a kid. But anyway, as far as other creative stuff, I wasn't. You
weren't going to be a performer. You never tried to do stand up or anything or
No,
compliments, but you just had a love of.
Yeah, I had a love of comedy. I just like when I would get into projects at school. Like I remember I did this Circus Maximus like sculpture of the Circus Maximus.
Okay.
Along with this like recording. Like I used the music from Patton. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
But they're like. And I did this real like over the top voiceover like the Circus Maximus.
Wow.
And like all this information about the Circus Maximus. So when I would get into a project, and this was like a ceramic, I made a giant ceramic Circus Maximus,
wow.
right? This was for like a Latin class. but the thing is like when I would get into something, I would really get into it.
Yeah.
I'd do it full tilt and be kind of creative about it and do sort of funny twists to it, like doing the thing. And but I never was really. My parents weren't at all educated. Mm-hmm. There was really very little support in that area so much.
Okay.
I was really into comics.
Mm-hmm.
Dungeons. I was kind of a jock nerd in a way. I played sports, but I also like loved D&D and fantasy and stuff like that growing up.
That's a very awesome. I mean, I'm from Houston, but I feel like that's a unique. Like Austin is a very unique place in Texas.
Yeah.
You go to Odessa, it's a different story.
Right.
If you're a jock, it's kind of you're a jock.
Right. Well, I mean, I think in part, I mean, I grew up with a ton of kids that were like that. They were in their
Football,
own.
yeah.
Well, they were kind of in their own group.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt like, for whatever reason, just because of my own nature, like I felt like I had like I had friends in all the groups. Like in a sense, I felt like like the guys who were kind of geeky brain band types. I could see that some of them were like, man, that dude's really funny, and like I connected with them, and they were kind of friends of mine. We weren't like we didn't hang out all the time, but I always felt like I kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm like a politician or something. I don't know, but I didn't feel like I totally fit in one mold.
Right.
Growing up so
That's
much.
great. That's a really great skill. I wish more artists would develop because, I would encourage everyone to listen to your podcast, but the Joel Mazurski one is great. And you guys were talking a little bit about the business aspects of being an artist and being confident and how important that is and convincing people to buy your shit. You've got to have that. It's almost like a comedian. You've got to seduce people into your way of thinking, into what's good about the thing you're making.
Right.
Because they don't always see it.
Well, like Joel said, and I'll quote him, is that I don't present something that I haven't already sold to myself.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're working, and then this may sound kind of corny, but if you're working from your heart, like if you're kind of coming from a really authentic place about your work, and it really kind of is like a true expression of, even if it's just like, for me, quite honestly, sometimes it's not anything super deep about it. I'm just expressing my own like sort of curious impulses. I say that a lot. It's like, just like and so it's authentic work that I really like kind of made, and I'm into it. I'm excited about it. And so if you're doing that, it's kind of easy to sell it because you actually truly believe in it. You don't have to like, convince somebody, or it's just like, I just come to people with my enthusiasm that I feel about it, and that usually just shines through,
Well, what you were asking Joel is how do you have doubts about that, or do you convince? How do you convince yourself? And it was really interesting because I think what you do is it's focused, and it's you're taking your creative vision and you're putting it into something that people can actually use.
Right.
And the creative impulse, like I'm a painter and they're abstract, and I can't understand what I'm doing half the time because people don't really know what art is. Right. And the creative impulse that just sort of drives a lot of stuff in the universe and manifests itself in people, no one knows what it means. Right. So it's incredibly difficult to market unless you can make it into a wooden vase that's like, this is my design, but you can also use it for this. It's like paintings have no use except for decoration.
Right.
And it's like
but maybe they do because maybe they draw out some other, like there's some mystery going on there that like, and honestly, I've some of this, you're bringing up stuff that I've talked to other people about in podcasts. And that's the other beautiful thing is every conversation I get to like, I ask, it seems like a really kind of a dorky sophomore question to say like, what does art mean to you, or what is the importance of art? But I've asked that to many people because
it's always different.
I always want to know what their sort of take on it is. And and when I talked to Ben Brandt, who's a good friend of mine, I was just visiting with him in New York. He's a sculptor and a woodworker, and he's done a lot of painting. And he's pretty serious. Sorry, he just got his master's from UT a couple of years ago, and he's really into this idea that like when you approach art, there's this sort of like this space that's sort of created of like mystery, especially even if you don't have the little card explaining what it's all about. But like there's this thing that kind of goes on, like this, not almost like an initiation, but it's kind of like a, there's a mystery that's sort of roiled up there that like, what is happening? What does this make you feel? And all that stuff's really, I think, kind of cool,
super cool,
and important, and like meaningful, and it provides, I don't think people even understand how valuable it is to culture. It's the,
But learning to think creatively, it applies to anything you ever want to do, which is why they try to push music or anything early.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be, a classical pianist, but you're going to have, an introduction to it.
Sure.
But as adults, Mark, like me making a living off my paintings has been fucking possible.
Right, right. Yeah.
But anyway, I don't remember how we got it. But I want to kind of redirect you a little bit because you did. So you went to school in Westlake, high school, all in Westlake, and then Okay, and then you went to UT.
Yes, I went to UT and I studied. I was in the School of Communication and was studying advertising. And honestly, I quit. I went like 2.5 years. It was funny. I was like a kid who was an all A, most A, B student my whole life. Literally don't think I ever made a C.
Yeah.
Not that I was like insanely good. I wasn't like, I think I was like a National Junior Honor Society or something, but I didn't make Honor Society in high school. I wasn't quite that brainy. But I was just like, school was pretty easy for me. I was regular grades. And man, when I got to college, it was, all bets were off. I was a C's and D's.
Really?
I was one of those classic cases of somebody who was not ready for school.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I got out of the house, I just kind of blew up, and I was like a total party animal.
Yeah.
And really just was not ready to really pursue anything. And even looking back, like it's funny that I don't own a TV now, and yet I was a RTF major. Like,
well,
I don't know. But yeah, that's when I went. I kind of chased adventure in Alaska and started working on fishing boats, and pretty much just walked away from UT and never looked back.
Cool.
Didn't even. Sometimes I think I don't even think I contacted It was just like I just quit one. I finished one semester and I never signed up again.
Wow.
Yeah, probably not the way to do it, but I was pretty much just like
fuck it. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So did you have any inclinations toward woodworking then, or artistic?
No, that's the funny thing is I actually worked. One thing that's kind of funny is that looking back, and this is again may sound kind of corny, but I had some really early. Like I literally remember playing with wooden blocks, like 2x4 chunks, and hammering and nailing and building things when I was really, really small, probably 5.
Yeah.
And then there was even a period when I had some markers from a Captain Crunch box where it came as like the toy.
Yeah. And
I'm drawing on the front of the house on the rock walls, drawing this like masterpiece. And my dad scoops me up, like I remember it was like a hawk picking me up, like bam, smack, I'm railing.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not where I was hoping that story was going to go.
But I swear to God, I think it kind of stifled my, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I feel like not only did I get not a lot of support of my creativity, just because my parents were uneducated and they weren't terribly, they just weren't educated themselves. They weren't super My mom was pretty creative, and she, probably supported to some degree, but I think like that may have even been a formative kind of experience. It may have when I get creative, bad things happen. Maybe the message that I got. So it took me many years until like, you know, it kind of peeked its head out a little bit during some of those projects and stuff. But then once I got in my 20s, I started to become more creative again. Okay. And once I got out of the house, and then, I worked in the music business. I used to like book and manage bands, and worked for this lady Jan Merkin in my 20s, and then I did the Alaska trip, and in Alaska is when I started doing some carpentry, just some basic carpentry with some people, and it kind of working with my hands and the tools kind of struck a chord with me.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, and there's a little bit more to that story I can tell you. Just how it rolled into the fine woodworking was, I started doing carpentry and doing more of it, and I had been working in restaurants and doing food sort of service work, and then I had always wanted to. When I got back on one of my Alaska trips, I started working for another contractor and being a carpenter's helper and stuff like that. I kind of liked it again, but. I was always kind of wishy-washy. I like the tools, I like working with my hands, but this tearing out sheetrock and just the general job site messiness, I was like, I don't know, this is totally speaking to me. Yeah. But then, when I was 28, I actually stopped drinking, stopped using any drugs.
Really?
Basically became sober.
Yeah.
And it was a huge, big pivot point in my life where I just like, I'm going to do something different here. Yeah. Obviously, I didn't quit for no reason. It was like, I was just not happy. I was in a place in my life where I felt like 30 was around the corner, and I was just like, it just felt like I hadn't grown any, and I was ready to make a change. And when that happened, in that first year of me quitting drinking, I met a guy who was a fine master wood carver, fine furniture maker, really brilliant artist, and I started studying with him. And when I did, it was like, it all lit up. It was like, the creative side of me, the part of me that liked the tools and working with my hands, all of a sudden discovered like this other part, like the
checking battery.
Yeah, found this other part, like discovered sort of like I had been in job sites doing carpentry, and then I found like more of the shop oriented fine woodworking where you kind of worked on projects with stationary tools, and he taught me how to do scale drawings. We used to go to life drawing classes, and like he just. Because he thought it would help with, it helps with carving, and when I sunk my teeth into that is kind of like when I really blossomed. As far as I just kind of like, all this other energy was out of my life. I didn't go partying. I wasn't going drinking. I was just like all of a sudden had all this energy. Yeah. And I just I would go to Half Price Books every week and like pour through all the different craft and woodworking books, and really just kind of became a big study of it. I worked with other people, and then in 2002 I went out on my own. So that was like 4 years. Wow. 4 years after that. Yeah. That initial sort of being introduced to it.
And you've been selling that whole since then to now. You've been selling furniture and woodworking?
Well, in 2002 I started my own thing. I kind of just started getting projects, but more like, it started out pretty crude stuff and then developed into some more pieces, and, you get referrals, and somehow, I did that all the way up until, and those jobs just kind of get bigger and better and stuff like that as I continue to do like custom furniture projects for people. Okay. And then starting in 2009 or 2010, after being, and I feel like I'm just going on and on here. Sorry.
Yeah. No, this is great. I mean, I want you to have the opportunity. I listen to your podcast. And well, no one is. I mean, everyone.
If you let me go, I'll be a stream of verbalizations. Though.
Well, everyone assumes that the guest is more interesting than the host, but it's not actually the case.
Well, no, just real quick, as far as like how I got to what I'm doing now, I've been in every studio tour since the first one.
Oh, really? Yeah. You saw some studio tour?
Yeah, I was in the first one. There was probably like 12 studios. It was tiny.
Really? What year?
Like right when I think 2003, 2002. Wow. That's when I started, when I had just established my shop.
Crazy.
And because I'm at the Splinter Group where I've always been. Okay. And all of us were in that first studio tour. Uh-huh. And so year after year, I always loved the studio tour because it was like forcing me to do spring cleaning and kind of reassess my work and take photographs and show people my new furniture. And, you know, when you're a young furniture maker, it was kind of fun. Like, I was always super proud, have everybody out, have my friends and family come by and see what I've built.
Yeah.
But over the years, that started to lose its appeal, and it became this sort of this like, because you never got work off of it. You never really sold. Right. I never really got commissions.
Yeah.
Like, people who go on the studio tour are just like appreciators, but not. I mean, custom furniture is expensive.
Yeah.
And so I
got. But you also have a lot of affordable. Did that come later?
Well, that's the whole point. Is that I had been in it for years, and in 2009, but my 7th or 8th year on the tour, I got a little bit like, I'm getting kind of bored of just showing my furniture. I was like, I want to make a small, like something small I can sell. And I had always had in the back of my mind, literally since the first time I like started fine woodworking, this vision of a wooden vessel with a glass liner, like I had always had in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. So I produced a small series of these flower vases, and I think that was in the 2009 studio tour. They all sold. It was a blast. I loved it, and that kind of started the whole like me making smaller things. And it was funny because at first there was a little resistance because I was like, I don't want to be the like old hippie woodworker like selling his tchotchkes at the craft fairs and stuff. And it's like, what's so funny is that's all I am now. Or that's not all I am, but I do a lot of that, and I don't care. Like, part of this transition for me was like, it was interesting. Like, when I started making the smaller designs, it resonated on so many new levels for me. It was like, it just, well, first of all, that old idea of like, well, I'm a furniture maker and I'm gonna, you know, that's kind of an ego bullshit idea.
Sure.
So like, making the smaller designs actually means more to, I don't know, I enjoy it more. It's like, the custom furniture is super, for me anyway, and I think for a lot of people, it's a really hard way to make a living.
Sure.
It's very stressful at times.
Probably not consistent sales-wise.
Oh, I mean, I always stay busy.
Yeah.
Staying busy is not an issue.
So you're never operating at a loss any of those years? You're always making enough to...
Just barely.
Really?
Barely.
Okay.
I mean...
And you're buying tools this whole time? And
yeah. I mean, like, you kind of... Okay, part of it... There was a stretch where I did more big cabinet jobs and more big... I worked on this one house for 2.5 years, and that was a huge project. And that one was helped me build my business a little bit. And but generally speaking, it's pretty hand to mouth for a lot of that time.
Sure.
Even though, I don't know, that's not totally true. There was periods where it was seemed more, but when I got through that period of doing the bigger cabinet jobs, I kind of reverted back. I realized that, okay, I've done that. I didn't really enjoy that. I was just a manager of people.
Yeah.
I want to get back into why I got into this. And so I started kind of doing furniture again, and actually that's about the time that I started doing the smaller pieces.
Okay.
And then there's just, you know, the smaller work, like my friends and family could actually afford something I made, which was never the case before.
Yeah.
And just normal people, like when you start doing custom furniture and especially that kind of high-end stuff, you pretty much just work for super wealthy people, and that started feeling like a class issue. Like, why am I only like super wealthy people get to own this stuff that I put my heart and soul into? Like, I want other people to be able to enjoy my designs as well, and they're more. I'm sorry, and they're more like
a professional podcaster.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
They're more repeatable.
My phone's on too. I leave it on purpose now because I want it to go.
No, but they're just more repeatable. You know, when you're doing custom work, there's this initial like cost up front that you put out, like you're
kind of overbidding too.
Well, you put out, you say, this is where I'm going to do this for this price, right? And then as the project goes, that profit margin just gets smaller and smaller, especially if it takes longer, which it always does.
Yeah.
Where when you're making smaller things, it's the reverse.
Yeah.
When you're making production things, it's fixed price. It never changes. If anything, it goes up. I've only elevated my prices over time. And I've only gotten better and faster in figuring out better methods. And it doesn't mean that I'm pooping them out like plastic gorilla clocks. It just means like I just refine the effort. And in the custom world, every job is like you're reinventing the wheel from job to job. So there's always kind of new mistakes and new things that you have to figure out. Yeah. And over the years, after doing that for so long and having it's a hard way to make a living.
Yeah.
Whenever I found this new paradigm, it's hard to. It's super refreshing. Like it was like, I don't know. It's just like, oh my God, I love this so much. Like the actual that I get to refine the effort on a quicker time frame instead of like you learn stuff over the arc of a career as being a furniture maker, but it seems like I get to apply decisions and like, oh, you know, I can. There's been times when I've had studio assistants like off and on, and I'll like text them like, oh my God, if we stop routing through that one part and cut this part first, blah, blah, blah. And they totally get it. They're like, oh my God, yeah, like major breakthrough.
Yeah.
Like this is going to totally change this one part of the process and take off 10 minutes that we used to have to clamp this one thing in a certain way or do some part.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you just have a realization. So I'm really into, I mean, it sounds cliche to say I'm really into process, but I really am into, I dig refining process.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to get better and better at something.
Yeah, and you're increasing the odds that you're going to make sales if you've got more options for people. And that connection with people is my favorite thing about making art, connecting with someone. And that's why, I mean, we both kind of, my stuff might be in your range. Like, I was really surprised the quality of the work on the website and the affordability. I really wasn't expecting it to be that affordable. And you ship these too, right? You ship.
Yeah.
How are online sales, if I can ask?
Yeah.
Those are good.
They're pretty good. You know, this year, I've done online sales for a while. I'd say last year. I mean, every year it's gotten bigger. Last year is definitely my best year online, and you know, I mean, and not just tell. Well, I don't know if you want to get into the numbers of it, but it's
up to you.
Well, I don't. Some people might think it's weird or tacky, but to me, it's just information. I don't really care. I mean, if I'm doing a grant 1,000 a month online, I'm happy. That can be like a decent.
That's a good living.
That's average.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can't live off that. But my shop rent's more than that.
Oh.
but that's definitely like something for that one segment because you know I'll have stuff in stores or wholesale or other direct sales. Like I do these markets and stuff now quite a bit. These other like local little.
Yeah, you did the Ladybird Market.
Well, I did that, but I mean, I sell down on when I quit doing furniture commissions about 1.5 years ago because I totally.
You don't do them at all.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I that was a big transition. Once I realized how much I love the small stuff.
Yeah.
I always say like making a living as a furniture maker is already like a act of faith in a certain way.
Sure.
Well, going that next, it was like another level of like, all right, now I'm gonna actually just make stuff that I like and put it out in the world and hope I get supported.
Yeah.
And it's more or less worked out. It's I've had to create more avenues of selling it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. It's
I'd be interested to know how you're doing with the social media. I know you got the podcast, and that's gotta help generate traffic to you. But are you using Twitter, use Facebook, or any of that stuff?
Yeah,
to sell work.
I mean, I try to work. You know, I work a decent social media campaign.
Yeah,
I've learned. I had somebody helping me, like kind of.
Oh, guru.
There was a young guy who's kind of helping me a couple of years ago and just sort of encouraged me to do it more. And honestly, once I got an iPhone, which I didn't even have a smartphone until beginning of last year.
Yeah, me too.
Once I got one, it's pretty easy. Once you get set up with it, it's not that hard to do.
Someone gave me one finally. It was just like, you have to be able to text. Yeah, and they're I don't think about it, but everyone has them.
Yeah.
Everyone that buys them has extra ones. So if you just put your feelers out there, like, I need an iPhone. So yeah, I got 6 of them because I get one every year.
Yeah, that's not me. I just have
I just got a 3, and I'm like, my world is totally changed. I'm Instagramming and
it makes
tweeting.
it way easier.
My problem, I'm having a big problem in Austin. It's really, I know there are social circles where there is money and where there are people that look at art and buy art, but I have a lot of trouble. I mean, I've been here for decades, but I know a lot of poor people. I know a lot of artists,
right?
And I have no clue how to break into that world. But I guess what I wanted to like direct you towards was Austin. How you were talking to Joel too about how Austin is changing.
so much, and you were talking about maybe moving to San Antonio or something.
Well, it's something I
or is he moving?
Threaten to sometimes, or think about, because I've become, I'd say in the last, I've always had a little bit of a relationship with San Antonio.
Yeah.
Like the band that I managed in my 20s was from there.
Okay.
So I used to go there to deal with them, but I have to say, and I didn't think about it that much then, but I guess really since I started doing the smaller works, I've gone to different sales events in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And I've just kind of gotten more and more fall in love with that city.
Yeah.
And realized, well, and number one, it's super cheap.
Yeah.
Two, it's just kind of got a cool vibe. There's a lot of people don't realize, and I've been saying this so much lately. I'm almost like nervous that I'm gonna ruin it. Like
someone will get to it and ruin it. Someone's already
not ruin it, but like not that I have that much power that I'm gonna create a stampede to San Antonio. But it's just funny. I have been kind of noticing how much I love San Antonio. It is affordable. And even just like old friends of mine from here have been. It's kind of like getting the same thing. They're saying the same thing. It's like I could see, and Joel said it too in our talk that he thinks that's probably is what's going to happen. And it's it'll be fine. I have an elderly. My dad's, as I said, he still lives here, and so I have to help out him with a lot of his affairs.
Okay.
I have an older sister that lives here, and
that's good.
Until that situation changes, probably gonna be hard for me to like live anywhere else. But
yeah, are you kind of bummed about the direction the city's going, or is it? It seems like there'd be more business, but all my friends every year, and they're artists too, and. A lot of them are going to LA because the rents here are going so high.
Yeah.
They're not moving to somewhere cheaper. They're like, well, it's more expensive here. I'll just go to a bigger city where the rent's the same.
Right, and there's more opportunities.
But Austin has changed a lot since I've been here in the 90s, but this is insane.
Yeah.
The way that the housing is changing and the way people are leaving in giant droves and it's my friends,
People are leaving?
Artists,
yeah,
and people I know,
mm-hmm.
and it's really, it's kind of, I don't know if it's scary. I like growth and I like money,
right?
And I would like to see Austin grow into, a bigger city.
Well, it's happening. And that's definitely, and you asked me what I think about it. I mean, like I have, like anything, I guess I have mixed feelings. For the most part, I'm not like I'm not with the nostalgic, backwards-looking crowd that's going to be like, man, the good old days, because that's usually a bunch of horseshit anyway, in my opinion. Even though a nicer, like Joel was saying, San Antonio is kind of like Austin was in the 90s. Like a little slower, there's cool stuff going on, but not too much cool stuff.
And it's working class. Like Austin wasn't. In the 90s when I got here, it was slackers.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd go to Les Amis, and the waitresses were pricks, and people thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But I was never into that. And all my friends were getting high and doing crazy shit and in bands, and why didn't you guys have jobs? And it doesn't have to be a good job, but they were all slackers, and I don't want to crap on Austin then, but I didn't like it. I didn't like slackers.
Right.
I don't want people coming here out of nowhere and fighting over water, and turning the city into an expensive crap hole or whatever, and not being respectful for the people that are here and have been here.
Yeah.
And we're on the east side. It happens in every gentrification happens in every.
Right. I mean, I guess
there's a lot of issues.
Part of what I think is like change is going to happen. It's just inevitable. And I kind of like certain aspects of the change that's happening in Austin. I like the density that's happening downtown.
Yeah. That's really neat.
I think I'm really into food. The food scene's just off the fucking charts. Oh, cool. It's so good. There's so much good food here now.
Yeah.
And it just feels like for creative people, there's kind of it seems like there's more opportunities in a way.
Yeah.
But it is, it's rough. I guess, if I have one regret, and it's kind of more along, it's probably a selfish regret, is that I didn't get, I don't own a house. I had all these early, my shop's been on the east side. I've been over here since 2000.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't tell you how many, I have a million different real estate almost, near misses, or I'd drive by some property and be like, oh yeah, I could have had that for $40,000 and I could put my shop in the backyard and you know, those kind of stories. And part of my story was that I got married and she had just bought a house over off MLK. We lived there for like 4 or 5 years, and but she owned it, and then we were like living there together. Then we got married, and then when we split up and got a divorce amicably, but still it was always just her. Legally, she owned the house. I may have been able to. I don't know. I don't want to get into that, but anyway, basically, this long and the short is I never got a house here, and that sometimes I'm bummed about that. Like I'm like, well, I'll never own a piece of property in my own city.
Well, you'd be bummed about. I'm bummed because I live in a house. I've been here 10 years. My wife and I have bought it 10 years ago, but you are chained to that fucking house.
Yeah.
Every time a doorknob breaks, every time a water, and if it's kind of an older house. And you don't have any money, you're the one fixing that shit. And I swear to God, every month I'm on YouTube. How the fuck do I get this? And I'd rather be free. I'd rather be renting.
Right. I know. I'm sure
it sucks either way.
Right. I just feel like I don't know. Yeah, who knows? It's probably freed me up to be able to spend more time on my work and stuff like that in some regards. But in some my latest little take on it is like, okay, well now I just have to be super successful. Like, that's the only way out. Move to San Antonio.
Yeah, I love San Antonio. I love the art scene there. I love the people. They're so nice. It's a different. You were saying it's like one of the oldest cities in the country. It's got that history. And Austin has always been this place where people are they're coming here to UT to learn or to teach, and they fall in love with the city. Maybe for a little bit. Maybe they stay, but more than likely they're like, you know what, I'm gonna split. And I just see them leaving all the time, getting bored or feeling, and you interviewed Deborah Broche, who's amazing, and she moved to Houston, right?
No, LA.
Oh, she moved to LA. Did she go to, or maybe she was in a gallery in Houston or something? But
I think so. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
She's in LA now. Yeah, and did you know Russell Etchen? He's another visual artist, but he moved there a couple of months ago. But he was really active in the visual art scene here for a long time.
I mean, it's funny. That's totally been your experience, but I know so many people I've connected with in my little scene on the east side where I shop is from like the Cafe Mundi days and back when that was there. And,
great.
I feel like they're all still going in here. I mean, I know tons of people that have kind of just stayed.
Yeah, that's cool.
But then again, most of them own houses.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be here if we didn't own this house because I think we got it for $80,000 10 years ago, and I don't know what it's worth now. But our rent is kind of locked in. Yeah, and mine is pretty. It's like $400 or something.
Yeah,
and I don't know anyone who's, efficiencies finding them for that much here is getting harder and harder.
Yeah. I live over by the UT now. I kind of bugged out of the east side when I split up with my wife and to a neighborhood that I have lived in prior. Because like growing up here, I've lived in every single neighborhood pretty much. Yeah. And I'm really fond of that sort of edge of Hyde Park area over there. And what's cool is that, I don't know, I was kind of, in some way I was a little burnt out on the east side. I was like, I want to go live back on the west side a little bit. But the thing I love about East Austin is if you set your life up correctly, you really don't deal with traffic very much, even though it's starting to kind of build up in some areas over here. But generally speaking, my work and life and everything was in this one small nucleus, and it was pretty nice. I never dealt with all that, the headaches of I-35 and MOPAC that so many people deal with on a regular basis. I never dealt with. And but when I moved over to north of University, it was like I kind of got back on the west side, but the reality is I just go up Dean Keaton, you scoot under the interstate, and you're back on the east side. It's like kind of like my secret underground tunnel. Like I'm not on the east side, but it's so accessible. I still feel like I live on the east side.
It's really close.
Yeah, from that one neighborhood.
It's a hard city to describe highway-wise. It does not make a lick of sense. Yeah. Compared to Houston, where there's a loop and stuff. San Antonio too. It's good laid out. Yeah. And the roads here make no sense. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Where did you grow up?
Houston, just kind of like in the middle of the city, and I moved here from there as a teenager.
Wow.
So yeah.
With your parents?
Yeah, my dad was a cab driver in Houston. It got more dangerous at the end of Reagan's era of doom. But we moved here and he drove a cab here. Cool. Yeah, it was. I come from a really poor background.
Yeah.
But Austin,
me too, man. I mean, my parents were, like I said, uneducated. My dad was a union pipe fitter, and my mom went to ACC night classes and taught her, and started being a secretary at a municipal water district out in Westlake out there, and she eventually became like office manager and then tax collector assessor for the water district. So she worked her way up, but they were both total like working class kind of
city jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Houston is a really dangerous place to be poor. Not fun. But Austin, when I got here, it was a total breath of relief. Like, it's not dangerous here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of poor people here, but you're not getting jumped as much. And,
yeah.
And people are generally having fun. Like, you're partying and
yeah.
You know.
I mean, I would say like my parents came more from poverty. They were more like middle class, working class kind of. And like I grew up in Westlake Hills.
Yeah.
So, and back then it wasn't necessarily like everybody was super wealthy. There was definitely some rich kids, but it was.
And there's still poor people over there.
Yeah, sure. Or still like middle class people, upper middle class.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so what is on? Are you doing any? You're not in any galleries, I guess, huh?
No, I kind of wanted to I've spent my entire summer in Colorado last year and worked for my friend's studio there. That's one cool thing about not doing furniture anymore is that I can kind of do what I'm doing from other places.
Oh.
And I kind of set up there for the summer and rented out my studio here and my apartment and just sort of hit the road for the summer, which was great. Got to beat the heat for a while.
Yeah.
But I was sort of, looking into trying to get my work in some galleries in Santa Fe and just never really got things off the ground. I feel like in a way my work, if some pieces that I do some more complex pieces that could be in a higher end gallery, and I want to go that direction. But I'm also
the price goes up. You got to increase 50% of the price.
You say my stuff's really affordable, and I totally agree. But I'm kind of in these. I'm sort of straddling, like, I feel like my work, some of the things I do could go even more exorbitant in price and be in like a gallery type setting, and then some of them, I'm in like, kind of like boutiques and museum shops and stuff like that, and like... Yeah.
You're in the Blanton, right? Blanton.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, it's hard to sell work over $100 a piece in those sort of settings.
Yeah.
In certain markets, like... Well, when I quit doing furniture, there's so much tourism in South Congress now, which I hadn't been there in decades.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. And so I started, I kind of need to replace that revenue stream of furniture commissions.
Yeah.
So I started doing this little market down there that happens like on the weekends. And it became it's not like a normal art fair where you have a certain expectation of what you want to sell.
Yeah.
It's a little more modest, but man, it's actually pretty good down there. It's like something that's become a regular little revenue stream for me is to show up down there and have my little booth set up. And so I've been doing that. And so when you're in these different like boutiques and little craft fairs and stuff, it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm in the wrong place as far as wanting to elevate my price, but at the same time, I kind of want to keep my stuff sort of accessible.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's important where you put yourself in the market. People start associating you. Like, if you get in a high-end gallery.
Well, I kind of worry sometimes, like, maybe I'm too... But then again, if my stuff was more expensive... Because I get people all the time, you could sell this $75 item for $150 in New York. And it's like, yeah, I can, but...
I'm not in New York.
Yeah, I'm not in New York, and maybe... I mean, sometimes, because I still struggle, right? I still hand to mouth, and sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I want to, maybe I should be, screw it. I need to just jack my prices up and only be in like super high-end establishments, but then that just, I don't know. But part of my, like, what I'd really like to do is to kind of develop two lines. Have a kind of a higher-end, more polished line for some of these higher-end boutiques and then some of the regular stuff. But then again, that just is a bunch of work. Like, that may be a great idea in theory, but trying to figure out how to create that is not. It's just a lot of. There's a lot of behind the scenes production that we need to go on in order to make that a reality.
Yeah, do you know Nick Offerman?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
got like a woodworking show, kind of. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen the show.
Or maybe it's not a show, but on YouTube, like people from woodworking magazines come to his. I mean, he's rich. You know, he's an LA actor,
right.
and he won't disclose where it is, but he makes these really high end canoes and.
I think he has guys working for him from what I can kind of figure out. I mean,
but he does a lot of stuff on his own too. There's some stuff on YouTube of him learning how to make different things from different manuals and
no, he's definitely a woodworker. It's great.
Yeah, he's so funny.
Yeah, I follow him on Twitter. I mean, on Instagram and stuff. Offerman Workshop.
Yeah,
he's a really nice guy too. I say that like I know him, but you know, it's fun. I get a good feel for him. I think he has a good reputation as like a really good dude.
Yeah, totally.
He has a whole like theater background and stuff. You know?
Illinois, he's from the Midwest. Megan Mullally's like they're just totally nice.
Yeah.
God, he has these really cool shower thoughts, like deep thoughts, sort of.
Yeah.
It's like my right hand has never touched my right elbow, just shit like that. If Hillary Clinton wins the presidency, it'll be the first time two presidents have had sex together or something. Just crazy shit like that. What is the other one? Sorry, I'm not funny or able to deliver things.
No, these are great.
There's another one that's the guy that proofread Hitler's speeches was a grammar Nazi. But that's the type of funny dude he is.
Yeah, those are all three stellar.
So where do you get your shit from? Where do you get wood from? I don't even know how to start finding that stuff. Because you've got like really pieces of wood that have knots and shit that look like aged.
Yeah.
How do you find that stuff?
Well, I actually so there's kind of like three main fine lumber sources in Austin.
Okay.
Or fine wood sources. There's fine lumber and plywood. It's been here forever.
So you go buy shit. You don't go look out in the woods.
No. Okay. I buy it, and then there's different grades. When you go to those like a professional lumber yard, which is not where like, it's where cabinet makers and furniture makers kind of go.
Okay.
And people who are doing like high end kind of like architectural details or architectural millworks. Like people who run a lot of moldings or different things like that, like fancier ones, not just the ones you buy at Home Depot. There's difference. There's Brazos Forest products,
okay,
and some of them have changed over the years. They've like evolved. Like different companies have bought them and they've changed their names. But there's essentially always been mainly like about 3 of them in Austin. And I currently am a really huge fan of this place called Dakota Hardwoods.
Dakota Hardwoods.
That's it, man. That's where I go. And
you've got to get them to sponsor you. You've got to start doing advertising on your show
believe me,
now.
I have like talked to them about it because
Dakota and like wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want Tito's or something. Like Tito's vodka to send me vodka.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Dakota's awesome. See, there's a guy named Ron who runs Dakota, and Ron used to run. There used to be a small kind of almost like mom and pop feeling place called Austin Hardwoods.
Okay.
They used to be off Lamar. Back off Goodrich, and it was there forever, and I used to go there. Ron was the guy who ran it. He was great, and he has since worked for, there was a place called Blue Links and stuff, but the latest operation he's worked for is this Dakota, and they are just awesome. I love dealing with them. I used to kind of use everybody, but I'm pretty much and I'm telling everybody who I know, I'm just really into going. I don't know. I just feel like for the service, the quality, and everything. And the thing is, when you go to these places, they have like professional lumber yards, for lack of a better term. They'll have all the different species that you want. Cherry, walnut, maple. You get into exotics, mahogany, other fancy ones. But even domestically, pecan, white oak, red oak. And also, there's a ton of there's a bunch of other ones.
And you buy this stuff in bulk, like wholesale?
Well, there's different grades. So there's different thicknesses. There's different, hardwood is graded into different thicknesses called quarters.
Okay.
4 quarters an inch, 6 quarters an inch and a half, 8 quarters 2 inches. And these are the rough dimensions that when it goes from a log and a sawyer, like at the mill, and they get the tree, cuts it into these different thicknesses.
Okay.
And then they also, as they're milling it down, they grade it. and there's different grades. There's like number 1, number 2 common, number 1 common, FAS. These are all these kind of weird nomenclatures, but they're basically different grades, and they're according to, like, I particularly love number 1 and number 2 common because it has the most knots and quote unquote defects.
Sure.
It also makes it the most affordable, but it also has a lot of the really rad grain patterns and really cool stuff. Like all that stuff that supposedly are defects, I actually like injecting into my super modern work. I feel like it kind of warms up the aesthetic a little bit.
Cool.
And I just like it. I mean, I can get totally corny about it, but I see it as like this beautiful metaphor for like imperfection.
Yeah.
I went through a space a few years ago where I was just thinking a lot about, I don't know, I was doing a lot of personal growth work and therapy. This was years ago. And kind of, I'm such a perfectionist. I was like trying to learn how to embrace like imperfection in a way, and sort of experimenting with that. And I remember thinking, like, I like these imperfections being part of the work because they're actually what make it interesting and make it kind of cool. Yeah. And I was like, this is kind of a cool metaphor for like our own imperfections as people. It's like, if we were like perfect, we'd be like IKEA furniture. We'd be like these, you know, perfect automatons, totally soulless. But it's like, it's our faults that kind of make us human and make us interesting. And
it engages the creative process too, and you have to solve a problem. Then you're making choices about, and then that's the opportunity to express yourself.
Yeah.
So, God, there's a million directions I could go, but I don't know. I really want to thank you for coming.
No, man. I'm sorry if I talk. I mean, I'm a real talker. I can totally go a million different directions. So I probably I didn't bring too much in.
But what's the SoundCloud website for your podcast?
It's if you just go to bdjcraftworks.com.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's what's so cool. I used to be hosted by Libsyn.
Okay.
But we switched to SoundCloud. Yeah. And it's just fully embedded on my website now, so you don't even have to go anywhere else but my website.
And then it goes to iTunes and everything.
Right. You can pick up the feed off iTunes, so you can subscribe off iTunes. And I'm sure you can subscribe through SoundCloud as well, but...
Craftworks Dialogue.
Yeah, Craftworks Dialogue. Check it out.
Yeah, hopefully more artists will... Do you have... You said the comedian. Who else do you plan on interviewing?
I just... one thing that's fun is I have a mobile setup, so I have actually... I like to do them when I'm on the road. And I was just in New York, and I had an awesome talk with this really super cool... woman illustrator, graphic designer she's in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, named Libby Vanderplug. Okay. She was great, and so I'm editing that one now. So that's going to be the next episode.
Is it monthly or weekly, or?
It's not really either one. I
doesn't matter. You can do it whenever you...
Well, that's the kind of the cool thing. But honestly, I mean, in a perfect world, I would do, if I could maybe crank out 2 a month, that would sort of be ideal. Yeah. But I just, again, have had a hard time doing that, and I've been lucky to do 1 a month.
It's hard to get... I have trouble nailing down artists that are going to do it, and you mentioned comedians. I've actually am trying to branch out into personalities, and that's just my own... I don't know enough people, and I need to meet more people.
Yeah.
But...
Well, the thing that's cool about it, to me, it's just been a license to go to people that I like and respect and ask them for, hey, can you... Yeah. Do you mind giving, I have this thing, and when I show them what I've done, they're usually into it. And like, I've tried to, like, I want to have artisanal butchers and all kinds of people. It's really, to me, I feel like the word craft can be pretty broad. And so, I mean, I've had composers, authors, sculptors. I had a rock climbing guru when I was in Boulder that I haven't actually even put up yet, just because he knows so much about rock climbing. And I want to do a comedian, and like, I just like people who are into their thing. Yeah. I mean, I'd be open to having all sorts of people on. I just kind of want it to be about people who are into what they're doing.
So you do craft. I'll do, because I have the worst fucking name for a podcast in the world. Austin Abstract Artist Podcast. I'll try to stick with the abstract artists who paint, and you do the rock climbers and the you'll have the recipes. You do that stuff, and I'll try to interview sad, depressed, broke painters on the edge they're getting ready to kill themselves. I'll put them on my podcast. Okay. But I hope you find advertisers. That's the next step, right? I mean,
yeah.
you read copy and they give you stuff. I mean,
I think I need to get more listeners before that's probably going to be
the
feasible.
numbers. Yeah,
I get about 150 downloads a month or something right now.
That's great.
So it's like, I don't know, maybe I could be doing more. Again, I'm just not such a great businessman. And quite honestly, like, I kind of want to, part of my own personal sort of approach to things is just to like put yourself, do the work.
Yeah.
And really go put all, like, I just want to make the best podcast I can and have fun with it and really get a lot. I get so much out of it now.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to make money off of it, but if that happens, great. But I
yeah.
really want to just kind of focus on that, and if I build it up,
yeah,
then maybe someday it'll become monetized. But I'm not too worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like it to happen. You know, it could definitely be another good.
I mean, artists need a lot of various income sources. Yeah, Shay a little.
Yeah.
I've actually like been trying to get into his life, so introduce myself to him for a long time.
I'm gonna have him on. We've tried to make it happen like before the last 2 different studio tours. I keep kind of missing him.
Good,
but I'll have him on eventually.
Cool. He's really I see him on YouTube talking. He's been doing. Does the East Austin studio tour. He's been doing this stuff for so long.
Yeah, no, Shay's he's a sweetheart of a guy. Yeah, super cool, super nice.
So, but I don't have anything else. Is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so, man. I really appreciate you having me on, and yeah, it was a blast. I've never met you until now.
I know,
but it was really fun. This is why
we may never meet again.
It was super cool to be on the other end of this, though.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're doing it. But yeah, thanks for coming over. Austin Abstract Artist Podcast number 9 with Brian David Johnson, bdjcraftworks.com.
That's it, man.
High five.
All right. Thanks, man.
Hey everybody, this is Carl Smith. I wanted to record a quick outro for the podcast number 9 with Brian David Johnson. I got like fucking giddy. Like I finally, I'm meeting an artist who's into podcasts and shit. So I got kind of sidetracked and I had a line of questions that I forgot. I got excited. So again, I'm learning how to podcast. I'm learning how to do all this stuff as I go. But I want to thank y'all for listening. I want to thank Brian for coming. And his podcast, Craftworks Dialogue, is through bdjcraftworks.com, and I strongly suggest you check it out. It's cool. Artists are not as fun as comedians, but they often have serious discussions about who they are and what they do. And yeah, it was cool that Brian mentioned NPR. That's sort of a serious way of consuming entertainment. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I'll see you guys at number 10. And again, thanks for listening. Austin Abstract Artists Podcast number 9 with Brian David Johnson. It's March 2015. See you guys later.